Welcome back. We're talking about wind farms. Lots of people in our audience have very strong views on this subject. Mighty Young from Roscommon, you have a development happening near you.
There's a plan to build 20 wind turbines on Schlievebourne Mountain in County Roscommon. And really our main concern is the human story. I mean, I was interesting to Minister Rabbit was saying that this is just the odd case or the odd example. I'll tell you, because I've been in the media a lot, I've been rung by people on a regular basis. 4 days ago, I was rung by a couple who told me they've actually had to put padding on their bedroom walls to try and block out the sound of wind turbines.
How far away are the turbines? Because I've been close to turbines myself. I didn't find the noise oppressive. I've been standing right beside them. Now, they weren't 180 metres tall. They were probably as tall as a 4-storey building. So what is it about those particular turbines?
OK, the story is it's about the wind direction. You can go to a turbine site and you can hear nothing because the wind's going a different direction. Okay. If the wind comes in a certain way, that sound is relentless, and particularly at night time. And I've seen several people who've been very concerned about the noise that they're experiencing.
Just a quick question. The people who are getting money out of this, are they complaining about the noise, or is it only those who don't get money out of it?
I think people who get €20,000 a year for a wind turbine are quite happy to put up with the noise.
They put up with the noise.
That's what they say, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Ger Bergen of the IFA, I mean, generally, some farmers very happy with a sinecure from the wind energy business. Other farmers who are not cut into the party, probably deeply unhappy.
Well, the IFA has approached the whole wind energy development on the basis of representing all farmers. First of all, for farmers that have been approached by energy companies like the two in the Midlands, we have worked to secure the best financial package, and we make no apologies for it, for farmers and a proper share of income.
Someone in health advising them on potential noise?
We have advice in every area. We've had 7 or 8 public meetings for landowners in the region. We've had over 1,000 farmers at those meetings.
Generally, what do your farmers think? Is it an attractive deal for them?
Obviously, in a low-income situation, farmers are going to look at all options for farming. Wind farming, you know, they see it as a possibility along with any other type of farming.
Does it affect their single farm payment in any way?
We've indemnified any losses to farm income, single farm payment, forestry areas like that as part of negotiations. It's been a major gain in negotiations.
So the wind energy companies have, if, for example, through some grab by the Minister for Finance decided to tax the single farm payment based on other income, you've got them indemnified, have you?
The taxing, the single farm payment is already taxed as part of farm income. There's no change there. The issue is not, the issue that we have fought for is to make sure that there are no losses to farmers as a consequence of wind farm development on their farms, their other farming activities. There's a significant impact on their farm in terms of roadways, access, all the rest of it. And we have worked very hard to make sure farmers are very aware of that.
By the way, it could improve the farm. A decent road on a farm could be an improvement. Eddie O'Connor, proximity to people, flicker, huge windmills outside people's windows. What do you say to people who are genuinely concerned about those possibilities?
Well, I remember standing underneath the turbine in Donegal with the Danish ambassador, the first wind farm we built in Ireland. And the blades were above us. Now, they weren't tall. They were actually much closer to us because they weren't tall. And I said to him at one stage, "Do you hear the noise?" And he said, "What noise?" So
but you could hear it?
I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, you couldn't hear anything?
And the wind was blowing at about 7 metres a second. And there was, people have nothing to fear.
What about flicker now?
And none of the, the shadow flicker happens at a certain time during the day when the sun is very low, and there's a certain guideline per year. And, you know, it may happen like it was shown in the video there. But, you know, in overall terms, look at the wealth that we can create in this country from stuff that has no value at the moment. Look at that wealth coming to the Midlands. An industry, as was reported earlier, that's going to be the size of our dairy industry by 2020, making money and stabilising. And what's going to happen to Bordnamona after all the power stations shut down? Where are all the people going to work? That wind above our heads can actually supply jobs for a huge number of people in the Midlands.
What about that question of one neighbour has it, he's signed on the dotted line, he gets it, this guy doesn't, disharmony in communities rouse, you know, the field all over again?
Well, can I tell you about the 1,200 turbines that we're going to put up in those 5 counties? There's 12 million euros a year that we're going to pay to the local communities. Now, you can build 12 community centres for that, you can build swimming pools, and you can go on doing this for the next 30 years. So we have a commitment to the local people. We are going to spend 1% or disperse 1% of all the revenue that comes in here. This is a glorious idea for the Midlands.
OK, Tim Cuffe. Of element. Are you promising the same? Because then we can have twice as many swimming pools, twice as many community centres.
I think something that hasn't been discussed tonight here is the jobs. I think the jobs are real during the construction.
But the turbines, are they made in China or Denmark or somewhere at the moment? Can they be made in Ireland?
We can get some of the supply chain out of it. We're saying we can get 3,000 jobs.
The Minister says he doesn't just want the sandwiches and the concrete. He wants different kinds of jobs.
These are real jobs. Between Ireland and the UK, we're talking about spending over 100 billion in renewables. If we cannot get a large part of the supply chain here in Ireland, we're doing something wrong.
Andrew, we saw you on the video. I mean, the promise from Eddie and Tim is of not untold wealth, but a lot of wealth pouring into a part of the country that could do with it. What's your response to that?
I suppose I was reminded as I came in here this evening looking at the tower outside, or the mast outside, which is, I checked on Google, is 350 feet high. What they're actually proposing is 600-foot high turbines under the current guidelines constructed 500 metres from people's homes. The stories of swimming pools and vast amount of money going back into communities, what good is that to somebody who has a 600-foot turbine built 500 metres from their home? And I noticed that the question in relation to property diminution there was never answered. If you build a 600-foot turbine 500 metres from somebody's home, you will demolish the value.
By the way, just on the point, the houses in Nutley across the road do not seem to be diminished unduly by the presence of the mast. But that's only by the way. I just offer that in case they get a bit annoyed.
You put 2,600-foot turbines across people's homes, which is going to happen, and will be a very similar case to the Hickeys here. That is what's going to happen.
Well, Mr. Keeker, beside us,
sure.
You've heard some things from the Minister that there will be a proper consultation. The initial consultation closes on Friday, but then when the draft guidelines are brought out in the third quarter of this year, there will be another chance for everyone to have a right go at these and make sure that any democratic deficit is addressed.
But we already have guidelines going back to 2006.
And
they're only selectively used by councils. For every guideline that we have been quoted in our efforts to secure answers as to what has happened, they've ignored guidelines that would support us. We have a turbine 370 metres from our home.
The guidelines said minimum 500.
Exactly.
And, Minister, that question of what you're going to put in place, initially there will be draft guidelines in October and then beyond. I mean, what people want is consistency all around the country, that one council in their avarice to get this development in their county allow more lenient guidelines and more intrusion upon people than maybe in another part of the country.
Well, I think, Pat, that the guidelines ought to be enforced without fear or favour. If they are being enforced differently and one gets complaints that some local authorities do it differently from others, then that ought to be brought right. But you also need flexibility because, you need to be able to deal with it site-specific, because what might apply if there were houses in reasonable proximity would be entirely different than if it was in the middle of the Bog of Allen.
Philip, what about that? I mean, if it's in the Bog of Allen, there's nobody around, the Minister's looking for flexibility to have them closer together. Is that reasonable?
That may be the case, but I can only sort of, I'm highlighting my own experience here, and the flexibility in a planning submission, a turbine was shown as being a certain distance from our home. When it was actually built, it was closer again.
Minister, that the home should be sacrosanct. From
flexibility
this kind of
is one way.
Yes, I think that's right. I think the home ought to be sacrosanct, and I think everything that can be done planning-wise to ensure that that's the case. I mean, our planning laws are very rigorous, Pat. If they're not being enforced in some areas, that's another question. But I mean, any application larger than 25 turbines has to go to the Strategic Infrastructure Board, to Board Planola, and has to be subject to all of the environmental
final reassurance I will
and
ask
other
you.
assessment.
I'll ask you for a final reassurance. It is beyond the ability of most small householders to go to the High Court or the Supreme Court. Will you undertake on their behalf, if county councils are bold, that you take them to task rather than the individual homeowner having to do it out of their own scarce resources?
Well, that's the remit of my colleague, the Minister for the Environment, but I would sincerely hope that he would do that. If we have the basis here of developing an export industry that can create jobs in this country, we have to do it sensitively. We have to have regard to local communities. And I would hope, and I believe, that my colleague, the Minister for the Environment, will ensure that that will happen. I mean, there isn't an application yet in the context of the export possibilities that I've talked about. let's see how that develops. It is not the intention to oppress householders or make the enjoyment of their homes impossible. That is not the intention.
OK. Minister, Yvonne and Kenneth, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone in our audience. Back to Claire.